I'm going to admit the waiting room.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, everyone. We're going to wait a couple more minutes just for other people to join, and then we will get started.
I see some of our Dig In webinar series regulars on this call. Hi, Kent. Hi, Leola. They're coming inside from their gardens for the winter into their homes.
All right, one more minute and we will get started. I'm just going to ask everyone if you could mute yourselves before we get started, except for the our lovely panel. All right, well, let's get started. We're going to try to keep this to an hour for everyone. My name is Mariah O'Crongley. I'm one of the program directors at Bedford 2030. Bedford 2030 is a grassroots environmental nonprofit in the town of Bedford that is working hard to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in the town of Bedford. We have a new goal of an 80% reduction by 2030, and a lot of that is going to be done by working on our buildings. That's addressing insulation work, removing fossil fuels, and many more things you'll learn about today. And we have a lovely co-sponsor, Hope Mazzola from William Ravis. Thank you very much, Hope. And then also we have Lauren Broyes from Sustainable Westchester, who is also an amazing resource. And we have Bob, our energy coach. Bob is a local guru who offers free energy coaching sessions to anyone in our community. We also have community members Carlos and David who have done insulation work and air source heat pump work, as well as some geothermal work. And we can go ahead and kick it off. Bob, if you want to take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Mariah. So I am absolutely delighted to see the interest from all the participants on the call this evening. At one level, I think it's evidence that people are taking heed of the calls to address our climate crisis. And yet at another level, perhaps it's just a response to the rising cost of energy. Now, whatever your reasons for being here, I'm glad that you came to join the team. So I'm Bob Fischman, and I'm your energy coach. And my job is to work with you to develop a game plan to defeat your opponents, those cold, drafty, and uncomfortable homes, high energy bills, unhealthy indoor environments, and the effect that all of these have on our climate. And like most coaches, I've played the game for quite a few years. You might even call me a bit of a grizzled veteran in the field here. I studied engineering in college and spent a career in the building world, managing the construction of skyscrapers and renovating buildings of all sorts, managing building projects for colleges, universities, private and public schools, and including those for the Bedford Central and Katona-Lewisboro school districts. It's always good to do work in your own community. Buildings have an outsized impact on our environment, not just in the materials and the methods used to construct them, but also in the ways that they use and frankly waste energy. And I wanted to be able to pair my knowledge of the building industry with a deeper understanding of the issues that we're all confronting today. So a decade ago, I went back to school at Columbia University to study for a master's in sustainability management. And climate change, I have learned, and we have all seen, is no longer looming on the horizon. It's here tonight. So a quick word about sustainability. You know, what exactly is it? And it does not mean doing without. And with all due respect to President Carter, it's not about putting on a wool sweater and turning down the thermostat. It's really about how we can live and enjoy our lives today without compromising the ability of our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come to enjoy their lives equally. So keep that in mind as we talk this evening about what you can do in your own homes. You want to live comfortably in your house? You want to accomplish this within your budget? You can do this by eliminating wasted energy, not by turning the heat down to uncomfortable levels and donning a coat indoors. And oh yes, you can do this all and stop burning fossil fuels now. You'll be healthier for it, and your children and grandchildren will thank you for it. So when we're done with the program this evening, we have one simple thing that we're going to ask of you. Sign up for a free, impartial, one-on-one coaching session with yours truly, where you and I can sit down and look at your home and make a game plan to move forward. Most homes in Westchester County are heated with oil or gas boilers and furnaces. The cost of these fossil fuels for heating our homes has surged of late. According to the US Information Agency, the price of heating oil at the end of last week was $3.38 a gallon. That's $1.10 higher than it was a year ago, 33% year-over-year jump. Similarly, the price of propane stands at $2.72 a gallon, 86 cents higher than it was a year ago, and that's a 32% rise. And natural gas bills are expected to be 30% higher this winter. And that's if we see temperatures similar to those that we had a year ago. Let's hope we don't see a much colder winter, because we could see bills that are even higher than 30%. So while the cost of fossil fuels are certainly volatile, they have been trending upward for quite a few months now. And while the cost of electricity certainly has risen, it has been more predictable than the costs with fossil fuels. And year over year, the cost of electricity has risen about 3.5%. And that's, if you think about it, that's just 1/10 of the rise in fossil fuel prices. Fortunately, we are no longer wedded to fossil fuels to heat our homes, as we're going to learn tonight. Affordable heat pump technology that runs on electricity is available to us now. It is clean, it is effective, it is efficient, and healthier for our environment, both indoors and outdoors. So the burning of any type of fossil fuel has negative consequences on our health. Advocates in New York City recognized that and decided to do something about it. Back in 2010, the city passed a law to outlaw the use of heavier grades of home heating oil. Why? Well, data from winter air quality surveys show that the highest density of particulate matter and sulfur dioxide was located in and around oil-heated buildings. Perhaps that was predictable, yet the way that New York City made the case to eliminate the burning of fossil fuels was to look at the health effects on the general population. And the map data showed that the buildings burning these fuels for heat exactly matched the data in the data maps for incidents of asthma and other respiratory illnesses like COPD. So Westchester followed suit and banned the use of these heavier grades of heating oil in 2016. And certainly these heavier grade fuel oils are the worst, but all fuel oil, when burned, generates these kinds of emissions. And while burning these fuels in mid-rise and high-rise buildings in the city spews these emissions from a point much higher into the atmosphere, the emissions from burning fossil fuels emanating from our own chimneys in our 2 and 3 and single-story homes settle close to the ground where our children play. And that's obviously a very concerning health effect. And if you were thinking about converting to natural gas, you should be aware that Con Edison has a moratorium on new connections that's been in effect for 3 years now. All of this points us to the smart solution. Use heat pumps to heat and cool our homes safely and efficiently. So now that we've explored reasons to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, let's turn our attention on how not to waste energy. After all, whatever the source of energy, we want to put that to good use in heating and cooling our homes efficiently We don't want that energy literally going out the window or the chimney or the attic for that matter. If we seal up the gaps where energy is lost and we insulate our homes effectively, we will be more comfortable and we will better manage our energy costs. So think of it as if you were putting on warm, dry boots on your feet, or a thick down coat around your torso, and a cozy woolen hat on your head. I certainly could use that from time to time, except that instead of wearing these inside of your home, you're putting these on your house. You can do all this without having to turn down the thermostat to an uncomfortable level. So the thing is, how do you know where to begin? Where to seal and to insulate your home, and what kind of heat pump makes sense? Well, each home is unique and each homeowner experiences different issues, whether it's drafty rooms, mold and mildew, icicles hanging from the roof, mice and insects taking up residence in your home. Well, these are a few concerns I often hear, and they offer clues to where your home may needlessly be wasting energy and where you may want to focus your attention. Now, our friends and our partners at Sustainable Westchester, thank you, Lauren, have a vetted list of contractors and energy companies that are available as resources for undertaking energy assessments, for taking on insulation improvements and converting to heat pumps. Once we've had the chance to sit down and discuss your home and what you would like to accomplish, you'll be much better prepared, I promise you, to choose the right companies to work with, to focus on the most beneficial improvements. So as Mariah mentioned, we have several homeowners with us this evening. Carlos and his wife, Katie, are here, and they've undertaken energy efficiency measures like insulation and weather sealing in their home. And they've also gone forward with a geothermal heating system in their home. And another homeowner, David, is here, and David has also installed heat pumps in his house to heat and cool his home. So what I'd like to do is now, I guess, turn the mic back over to them to hear about their experiences in making their own homes more comfortable and energy efficient. And then we'll have a chance to speak with them and ask questions about their experiences as well. So why don't we move on to that?
Okay, should I go first or?
Sure, Carlos, why don't you lead? Okay.
So my name's Carlos Albers. I live here in Katona. We moved here, and my wife and my wife couldn't be here tonight. Sends her apologies. But in any case, we moved here in 2018 in the middle of the summer, the hottest day of the summer, actually. We moved into an old house, an old drafty house, and on the hottest day of the summer. And one of the first things we noticed was that the upstairs was almost the same temperature as outside. And another thing we noticed was that the AC was working overtime and was, dripping wet. And it was so we sensed that there was a problem. And so we have oil heat and we have electricity for AC. And we, like what you mentioned to us to keep our, keeping our minds throughout this is we do have a concern for fighting climate change, and we do have a concern for our kids' future. So with all that in mind, we wanted to find a we wanted to see what was wrong. But one thing that we noticed though was that the upstairs was we noticed two problems. One, it was an old drafty house, and then two, it had gone through some renovations. And it looked like they had compromised the insulation barrier around the house. So we specifically wanted to see about finding a contractor that could insulate our place for us, or address our, do an assessment, make some recommendations, and and address some of the things that we can point them to from what we knew what was a problem. So that was our first foray into improvements and the the energy consumption of our home, and then what that ultimately led to was an insulation project. Finding a contractor, and we found a solution and implemented that. And then, as I mentioned, when you first reached out to me, that there was a second thing we did was also after that project, we wanted to see about a way about and getting rid of the oil altogether. And there's a little more to that. It wasn't just about getting rid of oil. I'm an engineer, and I have some knowledge on the on how heating and cooling works in the home, and I knew about geothermal as a technology. So that was something that I went and investigated and found was worthwhile to employ in my home, and we've since done that, and both have reasonable paybacks, and we're happy with it. I can go into the detail, but maybe you have questions. I don't know how far you want me to go. Or...
Sure. Let me begin with something. You mentioned that you had a compromised insulation barrier.
Yeah.
So
envelope, I
I'm
should
going to
say.
elaborate on that a bit.
Sure. So the home, I think, is originally a one-story home, but it's built on a hill. So it had a cellar and it had an attic. And over the years, the house is 100 years old. They built into the cellar and they built into the attic. And particularly in the attic, what they did was they cut a hole in the ceiling of the first floor and added a stair, and then finished the attic with some knee walls and made it look nice. But what they didn't realize, whoever had done that prior to us, was that the ceiling on the first floor was the envelope, the insulating envelope of the house. And they cut, looking at it from here, a 4-foot by 10-foot hole through the insulation, and then built a room up there. And so they essentially compromised the insulation. So when we first moved in here on the hottest day, and we went upstairs into the attic, which was a bedroom, it was 100 degrees outside. It was also 102 degrees inside. And
Right.
and then we went downstairs and looked at the AC unit, and it was just raining water and working full time. And so it was actually, we didn't realize exactly then that we had a problem. But when we wanted to sand the floors, and we had to replace a couple floorboards, and when we picked them up, we saw insulation, and then we looked at the hole and we realized what had happened.
Sure. So for people who are not engineers like you and I, they may not understand what that means to compromise an insulation barrier. People should think about their homes, as entirely enveloped in the heated space, in a continuous insulation barrier. Where you see gaps in those, oftentimes those are places where energy can be lost. And so, you had all these issues, and you decided, I guess, that the best approach was to bring in a firm to do an energy assessment and evaluate that. And I imagine that's something that you were able to point out to them, where that gap was. And I'm curious what other things might they have found in that in doing that energy assessment.
Yeah, so they found a number of things, and I pointed to them, obviously, to the attic insulation issue, and they documented that in a number of different ways. They also did in their assessment, they did something called a blower door test, where they put a big fan on the front door that blew outwards, and with some pressure measurement devices, they could figure out the air that would get sucked into the house through the fan that was blowing outside. And they found that I had we knew we had an old drafty house, and not only did they confirm that, but they measured it. I think that for our house, they had a number of like 1,000 CFM was normal for our house, and we had 4,000 CFM coming into the house. Mm-hmm. So they confirmed that we had a drafty house, and they provided some solutions for that. They told us, which was basically sealing all the edges and windows, and not changing windows, but just sealing around all the edge work around windows and all the edge work around the trim of the house, and putting on some devices around the doorways to stop air from blowing in through there. And I think they measured it afterwards, and I can't recall. I think they brought it down to within reason, or within the the recommended value for the home.
Right.
But it was a noticeable difference.
Yeah. So to explain to people that about that energy test, it's a standard test that's recommended, codified by the Building Performance Institute, and in doing that, the energy professionals are actually able to measure the amount of airflow and identify specifically where the leaks are coming in to your home as well. That's an important piece too. It's not just about the volume of air, but it's important to know where the issues are going to crop up and how best to address that. So in the end, did you go forward with all the recommendations that they had in their report to you?
We did, and we did. And actually, let me take it a step back. They had a couple extra recommendations on the insulation front that went beyond just addressing the hole in the attic. They identified that there's in the cellar, I think it's called the rim joist that goes around that above your foundation, which your wooden house sits on top of. There's something called the rim joist, and which is usually maybe on older houses. And this goes beyond my being an engineer knowledge, but it's often a spot that's overlooked, and they pointed out by insulating that would stop a lot of draft coming in through the house. So yes, we did implement all the recommendations, which included insulating the attic. They actually raised the envelope to envelop the entire space above the attic. They insulated around the rim joist. They did all this, the caulking and sealing around the edges and doorways, and then there was also insulation work. There was deficiencies in our cellar ceiling that they pointed out that they corrected.
That's great. That's
and we implemented it all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mentioned mice and insects taking up residence in people's homes. That gap at the rim joist is one of the places where they like to come in. And if we're able to seal that, that has that added benefit of making our home a healthier place, as well as a more weather tight place. People should think about a home as almost a big chimney, right? It's, air comes in from low points and wants to find its way out through the top. And if you're able to seal those up effectively the way they've done in your home, at the sealing it at the base, that rim joist is one good spot. Around the windows you mentioned, and then of course putting the hat on the head, putting effective insulation at the attic or roof line, that goes a long way to making your home more efficient. So you had a little bit of a gap between when you did the insulation work and when you decided to move forward with the geothermal system. Were you able to compare your energy bills before and after?
Good. So that's a great question, because I do that all the time. I eagerly await my energy bill every month, and I plug in the numbers in my Excel spreadsheet to see if what might be the payback. And it's not easily ascertained because of the order in which we did things. We moved in July 2018. We did that work, I think, December 2018, and then we went 1 year. And the following December, we did the geothermal. And if you look at it on a spreadsheet, it makes it tricky to compare. But what I can tell you is that if we look at the first year, which was half with insulation and half without insulation, if I look at it that way, and then compare it to the following year, we found that we reduced our energy bill by about I think it was like $2,200, but that's only for half a year, so we didn't have the whole year picture. And then when we implemented the geothermal and we compare that to, we found that we reduced our energy bills in total about $5,200 in a year. But still, that doesn't tell the whole picture because we don't know what a whole year would have been like in this house with not addressing any of the issues.
Sure.
But we feel, I think we saw about, we've eliminated, we have no more oil, got rid of that bill altogether. And then as well as, but on the flip side, our electric went up a little bit, but the difference is still a savings of 5,000.
Those are very compelling numbers.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could share with us how, if you don't mind, how it was all paid for. What incentives were you able to take advantage of? And did you, either use your own resources or look for some of the financing resources that the state makes available?
They so on the insulation front, they offered some rebates. I think they were rebates, but it wasn't very much. Just to put numbers to it, I think it was for the insulation work, it was a $22,000 bill. I think we got maybe a $1,200 incentive. They did offer, you could either finance it over a period. They offered financing themselves at, a moderate interest rate. But they also had something where you could defer it you can defer all payments and interest for 1 year and then pay the whole bill. And then we chose to do that. We had the resources at the time. So we were able to defer payments for 1 year, pay the whole bill, and then receive maybe $1,200 in I think it was a rebate for the I think it was a rebate for the installation work. The geothermal had a better incentive. The geothermal, we also chose. I think the contractors that do this type of work that we engaged all had the ability to offer financing. We chose not to take it. We paid the bills, but with our own resources. But the geothermal had more rebates and credits. It offered direct rebates, I think, from NYSERDA and from it was NYSERDA and there was another, and then they also had but you get a federal credit. So all in all, I think it was like a 30% off the price tag or something like that.
That's fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, the geothermal had a better deal.
Yeah. So people understand some of the financing resources that are available. There are some great subsidies that the state offers on different levels of financing and different packages. The reality is that the lower your income is, the better the subsidy is available to you. But as you suggested, one interesting thing is that you had a financing package that you could pay back in a year. So oftentimes these tax credits sound really great, but you have to lay the money out up front for the contractor because the contractor wants to get paid for their work, right? So you're going to see the tax credit come back in a year when you file your taxes. So one of the loan products that's available through NYSERDA is basically a little bridge loan that allows you to you can finance the tax credit at little to no interest at all, as long as you pay it back, in the space of a year or 2 years. I forget the exact amount, but the time frame is set up so that you can bridge the tax credit with financing. That's a great resource. So people shouldn't be concerned about the cash flow because there are wonderful financing tools that are available to homeowners to take on these types of improvements and make that available. Lauren, I believe, has just shared to everybody here in the audience a document that talks about home energy efficiency. And Lauren, does this show the financing resources available as well?
That's coming in the next one.
This
Okay.
first one is rebates for energy efficiency, and the next one I'm going to put in is the financing and loan products.
That's great. Thank you, Lauren. You're a fabulous resource to everybody here. So I want to ask one more question, and then we'll hear from David. So tell us a little bit about the experience of having geothermal installed. You had a home that had central AC, and you had an oil-fired heating system. How did you make that conversion within your home, and what happened on the outside of your home, and what was the experience like?
Sure. That's another good question. That's something I'd like to talk about. So we had, like you said, we had a central AC system, we had ductwork, and we had a hot water boiler, oil fired, with 700-pound radiators all around the house. And every time I get an oil bill, my head turns red. I don't know why I have them pegged, but it does. And so I knew about geothermal. I wanted to pursue it. I went out. I found a vendor that that could do that. And it went along. And this is maybe something worth talking about. So we used Dandelion, if I could say, was the company. They're an agency company that does geothermal installations, and they do the whole package where they come in and do an assessment, and then they'll they'll give you a proposal, and then if you sign on the dotted line, you can do the installation. And we did that. It was our house was kind of set up perfectly for it. If you have ductwork and you have a central AC unit, and you have that condensing unit sitting outside on a pad somewhere, and then you have a boiler with an oil-fired boiler, it's like you have all the pieces to make geothermal, to bring the payback of geothermal into a reasonable range, because you're going to have a high an oil bill, and then you already have the infrastructure in place, the ductwork in place to put in the heat pump that uses the geothermal. So we had that, and the experience was it wasn't, once we signed on that dotted line, they put us on their schedule, which was like a month out, and then they showed up with the first thing that showed up was the drillers that did the 2 bores. They did 2 bores for our home, and I think they were in and out in a day. They did 2 bores in the front lawn, and then they dug a trench up to the foundation of the house, and put in the 2 holes for the 2 penetrations for the pipes to go out to the wells and into the basement, and then they backfilled that. They didn't plant the grass back or fix the shrubs or anything like that. Yeah. But they were in and out in one day, and then came the inside contractor who had to pull out the HVAC unit from our central AC and put in the heat pump for the geothermal. And what we did it's kind of a split system that's in our basement. So we had them remove the oil tanks altogether. We had them remove the boiler altogether. And where the oil tanks were, they put a little, I guess it's like the heat exchanger for the geothermal. And then where our central AC unit was, they put the evaporator, the heat pump unit, or the evaporator. And I think you can get them all in one to go in that spot, but we chose to have 2 separate. So they did that, and then where our old AC system had the outdoor condensing unit on a pad, they pulled that out and got rid of that. And all that work took about a week to 2 weeks. They had a couple snafus in the process, nothing major, but they had to come back a couple times. But I'd say in a couple of weeks it was all done, and so it was relatively it was quick, because our house was aligned to do it, and they were able to pull it in and do all the work. It went relatively easy. And then since then, they didn't do this. I have had to do it myself. I've been having to get rid of these 700-pound radiators, and but I've gained a lot of wall space that I didn't have prior to that, and And now that it's all done, I'm very happy that it works great. I think the unit includes an electric coil in case, for redundancy. The unit will work is designed to work with the wells up to the coldest temperatures for what this house needs. But I think they provide anyway an electric coil for a backup, and I try not to use it because it's electric. I'm always trying to hammer down and lower the thermostat and wear the hat. And I'll try not to do that in the future, but so far so good. Yeah, that's where we're at.
Well, that's terrific. Maureen has asked a question that maybe I'll dive in on. She'd like more details on geothermal and open loop versus closed loop, and whether or not you need a pond or a lake. So I'm going to give a quick answer on this, Maureen. And I'm going to speak from my own personal experience. In my home, I put a geosystem in when a year or so after moving in, much as Carlos had done. We had a pond in our front yard, and we thought we would use the pond for a geosystem. But in effect, it wasn't. It wouldn't work from an engineering perspective because the pond wasn't quite deep enough. You need to be sort of below that strata where if you're out swimming in a lake, you feel you go down a little bit and your feet feel cold. You need to get below that to get the efficiency of what's called a pond loop. We ended up doing an open loop, which is unusual in this area, but at the time it was it made a lot of sense, and we've been very happy with that. It is very, very efficient. To Carlos's point about energy savings, we measured our own energy savings at the end of the first summer, and the prior year we had a home that had no air conditioning at all, and except save for a single window unit and a ceiling fan. And we actually found that our utility bills for the summer were lower with central air geothermal than it was with the house fan and that one window unit. So they're very, very efficient. The closed loop systems actually are much more effective to the extent that you're not reliant on good water quality from well water. And well water can be of varying levels of quality. Minerals can have effects on the equipment itself. So when push comes to shove, the industry really is leaning strongly to the type of system that Carlos has installed, and that's a closed loop system. It's quick, it's effective, and the equipment that's in the ground is going to last 100 years. So it's a very simple and straightforward and easily managed system. So with that, let's turn it over to David, and David, let's hear your experience on what you did in your home, air source heat pumps and other efficiency measures. How did things go for you?
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. We live in Katona. We moved in 2003. And we have a smallish 4-bedroom house. It's like 2,400 square feet, and it's on top of a hill. And it was built in the 20s. So, when I first heard about the energy assessment, it was actually 9 years ago, and we got it done. And it was pretty eye-opening, to say the least. I mean, our house was freezing and drafting in the winter and just unbearably hot in the summer. So the recommendations mainly were just insulation, and heat pump, and a couple heat pumps. But 9 years ago, we didn't really have the resources to pursue these recommendations, and we kind of got distracted by other things in the house that needed attention, like kitchens and basement stuff, everything. Just it's like everything. Our house was built in the 1920s. It had cedar shingles on the outside, and then the asbestos shingle guy came along. They put those right on top of the cedar, and then aluminum siding came along in the 60s and 70s, and they just piled that right on top of everything. So we had every update of whatever siding came along was all on our house, but there was nothing in the walls. They were hollow. So as I mentioned, it was just extremely cold in the winter, very hot in the summer. There was one air conditioning unit that was built into the wall downstairs. It was like a massive 18,000 BTU unit inside the wall. And so my time was spent, cleaning it and thinking I was doing a good thing by making it more efficient and getting the bugs out of everything, and going around vacuuming the baseboard radiators, getting the dust out of there, thinking I was saving energy by, getting the cobwebs out of that, and just trying to keep going with what we had. And eventually, we finally, I think 2.5 years ago, were ready to do the insulation, and on top of a bigger project, which was to remove all the siding that was on there, insulate the outside of the house properly, wrap it, insulate it, have insulation pumped into the walls, replaced all the windows in the house with much more efficient windows. And that was a big project. And it came out great. It took, several months to complete, as you can imagine. So we had this great living space, but it was still wasn't it was warmer in the winter, and the summer was still hot, and I knew. I pulled out my assessment again from 9 years ago, and I saw that heat pump, and at the time I was quoted $12,000 for a heat pump, which back then was, with everything else going on, was just something to think about. I got a few quotes to do the work, and it was like $5,000. So needless to say, we had a heat pump put in downstairs, and I mean, I can't tell you how fantastic it's been. It's just like every aspect of, the past almost 20 years of the house, of being uncomfortable in the summer and freezing in the winter, is like handled in seconds with this heat pump. It's fantastic. And before we had Nest thermostats in our house, that's one of my, I'll put in great thermostats, ignoring the fact that there's no insulation in the walls, and that'll help. But I look, every month they send you a report how much energy you're using, and so I just wanted to compare the previous year, before we had any work done in the heat pump, to what was happening now. And it was startling. The savings, or in energy usage, it was at least 30%. Every month was like significantly less. So, very happy with the heat pump, great experience. The work was done in one day. We worked with a local company called AMX Heating and Cooling, and we found them from a friend of the family, and a classmate and friend of one of my daughters, and they were fantastic. And it was super easy, and you know, no disruption. And I don't know, it was a great experience. And the next project we have to think about, and Bob, you can probably help us. We do have central AC upstairs, which helps everything, but our furnace or the boiler is 26 years old. And so that's ready to be, I think the heat pump is the next project upstairs, or to tap into that ductwork somehow and maybe replace the air unit with a heat pump if that's possible. But the insulation and the heat pump downstairs have just made everything so much more comfortable. And I mean, it was, you know, a massive difference for us. So we're very happy we did it.
That's a great report, David. What a wonderful story. I don't think that all the efforts you put in over the years to make what you had more efficient were wasted. You shouldn't feel bad about that, but clearly you now have a home that's much better insulated, and you've got equipment that works much more efficiently than what you had, and so that's doing well for you. So just so people understand, because the downstairs of your home is not ducted, you have a heat pump that has an outdoor component and an indoor component. So these are, is it a single zone inside? Do you have multiple units inside?
It's a single zone, and it actually covers, there's 4 rooms. It's like living room, entryway, kitchen, and a dining room, and it covers everything easily. And it's a small, I mean, it's not, you know, it's probably 3 feet across and, you know, a foot high or something, but it's great. You can, you know, it has different fans and it sweeps and it's quiet. There's no 18,000 BTU air conditioning blasting, you know, that's built into the wall. It's silent. So right. It's great.
And where you had that in the wall, you now have an insulated
yes
wall there, right? Instead of the gap where the air can blow through in the wintertime and make it cold. And, so you've done well there too. So people understand this. The heat pump, the air source heat pump that you have, it has an outdoor component and an indoor component, and that's what's commonly referred to as a mini split. And it is possible, so people know that you know, you could have multiple splits on the multiple pieces on the inside in different rooms, and a single unit on the outside, depending on the heating and air conditioning loads that's serving. That's a little different from the geothermal system that Carlos had, where he has a central fan coil, if you will. It's a box that's you know, a couple of feet square, and it blows, and it may be 4 foot tall, and it blows air through a ducted system. Now, the air source heat pumps are available to work with a centrally ducted system, as well as the mini split that you have. So you would, as you know, as you go forward with thinking about what you want to do upstairs, you certainly could consider geothermal, or you could consider you know, expanding the air source heat pump capability that you have in the house and tying that into the ducted system that you currently have on the second floor. You know, as with everybody's homes, it's, you know, everybody's got a unique setup. And so you have to see what makes sense in your own home. Now, Lauren has just put up a fabulous resource that I think people might want to dive into. This is something that's produced by NYSERDA, and it is just a simple way of figuring out how to see what kind of heat pump makes sense for your own home. And it's NYSERDA's heat pump planner. So I urge everybody here to grab that link and have a look at that. I think it's well worthwhile. So sounds like you've seen some pretty nice savings, 30%, and that's just based on the ground floor. In the meantime, yet you are working, you're still running your boiler for heating upstairs, I guess?
Yes, but the good thing about the heat pump being on the first floor is that if the first floor is sufficiently comfortable, that kind of rises up and warms the second floor as well. Just the way our house is, and not being a huge house, it's just, so it is, I'm convinced that it is kind of helping, the heat is rising up and heating the second floor too. So our attic is insulated, so it's keeping kind of everything, comfortable upstairs as well. Just so we are still using the boiler for upstairs, but it's it's set to like 68 in the winter or something. It's nothing crazy.
Right, and so you're able to work with that heat pump to generate most of the heat, and is it also working for cooling the home in the summer, or what do you have upstairs right now?
Yeah, cooling. It cools downstairs, and then upstairs we have the central AC.
Running off the older, this is the older AC unit that you had before.
Yep. The ducted AC upstairs.
And so you could pretty readily swap that AC unit out for a ducted heat pump system. That might be a good solution for you.
That's great.
Happy to explore that further with you offline, and we can see what makes sense for your particular home. But when you have that would give you the opportunity to actually pull the boiler out of the house, get rid of the oil tank. One doesn't like a leaky oil tank anywhere, whether it's buried or not. My expectation is that if you were to move to full heat pump technology, that the incentives that you would see are actually higher than if you are using it and not getting rid of your boiler. So let me ask you, what types of incentives were you able to receive for your project?
Well, the heat pump came with, I believe, like a $500 rebate. So that was great. It's what, 10% of the cost. And the other project was, I think we got a little bit for the windows and stuff, but it was mainly just, there wasn't a lot of rebates for that. But I mean, the benefits and the savings and the usage right now, I think are what, I'm pleased about. But just the energy use from the oil and the monthly cost. I haven't checked our bills, but I know from living here for 20 years that things are not working as hard as they once were to keep everything at a certain livable level, which is great.
Yeah. So one of the things to just if you haven't taken advantage of it, and for others on the call, heat pumps, the air source heat pumps are eligible for a tax credit, as are the improvements that you've done to insulate your home. They're not as significant as the geothermal systems tax credits, or which match. We were talking about this earlier before the call got underway. It's the same level that you would get actually if you went solar. And I'm just going to mention this to people while we're on the call here, that since we're now talking about all electric heating and cooling, well, you know, solar can make a lot of sense for people. You know, the tax credits are substantial. The incentives from New York State are still pretty healthy. And the cost to install solar, as well as battery backup storage, have come down significantly too. So people should give some thought to that. And if your home is not a good candidate, Sustainable Westchester has a terrific community solar program, which will further discount your energy bills from whatever it is you're paying today. So that's I think all really good information for people to take and move forward with. So we've got a little time left. Let's hear some of these other questions that are on the Q&A. David and Carlos, thank you very much for your contributions here this evening.
Thank you.
So let me just go back and make sure I've got everybody's. So Craig asks, between air source and ground source heat pumps, ground source, another name for geothermal, is one more advantageous than the other? Well, it depends on your home. You know, if you already have air distribution, air ducts in your home, then geothermal might be a viable possibility for you. If you don't, you want to look at what the cost would be and the logistics of putting duct distribution in your home. Air source heat pumps have efficiencies that are considerably better than resistance electric baseboard heat, and certainly better than oil and gas as well. But ground source heat pumps are that much more efficient than air source heat pumps. And the reason for that is that air source heat pumps are working against whatever the outdoor air temperature is, and they are very effective. They'll go down to very, very low temperatures, single digits, and even into negative numbers, and still remain effective. But the ground temperatures in our latitude are somewhere around 55, 57 degrees year round. So the ground source heat pumps tend to be more efficient. They're a little bit costlier to install, but the rebates and incentives are higher as a result, to help offset that cost. Fiona just comments, that contractor she had spoken to said the heat pump wasn't large enough to get any rebates. Fiona, I'm not sure what the specifics of that were, but there may be certain criteria to do that. I'm not sure, what was happening there. Leola, I think I've answered your question, except that you're also asking, in small properties with homes close together, is there still enough room? I think the answer is commonly yes. The boreholes, as Carlos indicated, they're pretty small. They're 8-inch boreholes. Generally, you want to have them spaced about 20 feet apart from one another, but that's something that the contractor would lay out and ensure that it's working effectively in the ground, and it would be, I think it's viable for pretty much any home in this area, at least as far as the outdoor work is concerned. General costs for air source with existing ducts and mini splits. Every home is going to be different, Hillary, and we can talk about what you need in your own home, and there are different contractors that you can reach out to from the list that we would share with you that Sustainable Westchester has put together, and you can certainly and should certainly shop around, see what who's going to give you the best approach for your home, cost being one of those factors. What else am I missing here?
Are any heat pump systems that can work with hot water radiators rather than duct work?
Great question. Thank you. Thank Don. So there are heat pumps that are developed called water to air heat pumps. It is a mature technology, seen much more in, air to water heat pumps. I said that backwards. Air to water heat pumps. It's a mature technology that's used commonly in Europe. In Europe, they have, even if you went to the Netherlands, for example, the average temperatures there are similar to what we see here. However, we have more extremes of weather here. So these air to water heat pumps are not generating the kind of heat that you generally get out of a hot water boiler. And that's how most of our hot water baseboards or hot water radiators are designed. If, however, you super insulate your home, go to sort of passive house standards around your home, then you might find that the energy loads are lower, and therefore you can get away with with this type of heat pump. The technology is being developed to a greater extent here in the United States. A lot of the geothermal contractors are now working on pairing their systems with existing hot water radiators, but they're not there yet. They're still a couple of years away from making this market ready here for the climate that we have here in the Northeast. So, at this point, if you're going to use your existing hot water radiators, you really, you're going to be off of heat pumps. So think about the more conventional heat pump resources that are available to us today, and down the road, you may find that that these are good resources that we can get later. Let's see, what permits are needed. It really depends on the work that you're doing. If you're doing solar, there's a special solar permit. It really depends on the type of thing that's being undertaken. If there's electrical work involved, electrician's going to have to pull a permit. But typically for insulating a home in this area, no special permits are required for that. So you're working with your existing building envelope, and you're just upgrading that. So how do we have a? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think we're good on questions. We just had one more. How do you sign up with Bob? And I just sent a link to everyone where you can sign up for your free session with Bob. It's a quick survey that's just your name, email, and your address. Bob will look up your address just to get a little bit more information about your home. And then once you complete that survey, you'll get a link in your email to pick a date and time that works for you, and you're off to the races. Does anyone have any other questions? Well, thank you everyone so much. Thank you, Bob, Carlos, and David for all your input, thoughts, experiences. We really appreciate it. And we hope everyone signs up for an energy coach session.
I'd
Have a
very much like
wonderful-
to help everybody out here. So please do go forward with that. And also a special thanks to Lauren for all her support and the help from Sustainable
And
Western.
Hope.
And Hope, we really appreciate your sponsorship here, and we look forward to helping your clients find clean, green homes in our community.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening and a great holiday.